Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nutritional Revolution podcast. We have an amazing female athlete here with us today. We have Emma Pallant-Browne. She started as a decorated track runner before switching to multi-sport competitions after dealing with some knee injuries, which we can talk about today. And since then, she's won world titles in both duathlon and aquathlon and has more than a dozen wins at major Ironman 70.3 events. We are super stoked to talk to you, Emma. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
We are going to dive into all things nutrition. But before you guys get to learn too much about Emma, we're going to dive straight into her two truths and a lie. So go ahead and break those down for us.
Okay, one of these is a lie. Okay. My brother is a professional wrestler.
Okay.
I can stick my tongue up my nose.
Okay.
Or I was part of a world record breaking 4x1500 meter race.
Okay. Wow. Okay. What do you think, Amanda?
I'm going to say sticking your tongue up your nose, just because the other two seem plausible.
Yes. I mean,
that one seems a little more out there.
I'm going to go with Amanda on this one. Yeah, because I feel like maybe the other ones are plausible. And with your athletic talent, I feel like you probably have some like superhuman parents that produce some super athlete babies. So I feel like your brother probably could be a pro wrestler. Okay, well, don't tell us the answer yet. We will reveal it for the listeners at the end, whether or not Emma has a professional wrestler as a brother, if she can stick her tongue up her nose, or if she was part of a world record where she did 4x1500 meter race. All right, so let's dive into a little bit of I know we did a little bit in the intro, but tell us a little bit about your upbringing and what got you involved in sport and endurance sport and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I think my mum will say I was always like a hyperactive kid, like I couldn't sit still, and she would take me to all the sports clubs when I was little just so that I wouldn't misbehave at school. And yeah, the one that kind of really stuck that I absolutely loved the most was running. And it was actually my running coach, I want to say I was about 13, where he said, if you want to be really good at one sport, then you got to just you can't be doing 10 sports in a week. Like you got to come to training more and focus on these races. And yeah, that's where my love was. So kind of pursued running and yeah, got results, and it just kind of snowballed into, I just loved it.
That's awesome. Were either of your parents active?
Yeah, so my mum, bless her, she just spent all her time taking 3 kids wherever they wanted to go and do whatever they wanted to do, because we all wanted to do opposite things.
Oh my goodness.
But my dad, yeah, he was sporty when he was younger and was really into his sailing and would often be off on the boat and stuff. So yeah, they're definitely active.
That's awesome. And you mentioned, or we read in your bio, there's a knee injury situation that happened. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like how long ago was that and what happened? How did you recover from that?
Yeah, so in 2010, I think it was, I had to have knee surgery. I've kind of had tendinopathy on my knee, and but I was doing well. I was kind of winning races, and I always said, I'm going to get it sorted kind of after the next race. I'm just going to train through, and then I'd get to the next race, get a good result. And yeah, I was lucky enough to be on UK Athletics funding, and they were like, listen, you need to go and see the doctor. And he took one look at the tendon and was like, no, we need to operate on this. And yeah, I had an awesome surgeon who, yeah, they said it totally unraveled, and they actually thought there was a tear through it.
Wow.
So we're not sure you're going to be able to keep running. You got to start looking at other things. And yeah, I just had such great rehab. And it was that time. So when I was on crutches to begin with, I was doing things like single leg rowing, and just doing anything to keep fit.
Yeah.
And then I'd start doing swimming with a pool boy. Then I started cycling. And yeah, I kind of just wanted to have a goal at the end of my rehab. And I got back into running, and then like I had some good results, but like it was still niggling. Kind of every time I was getting like close to being back to my full training, it was overdoing it. So I kind of had to supplement a lot of those years with swim biking anyway. And then it was the 2012 London Olympic trials, and Kelly Holmes had been mentoring me, and she was there watching the race. And I was running around and my knee was just not feeling good. And I stepped off the track. Yeah, I just remember crying in the call room, and she came over and she was like, okay, let's just have another goal for now. Why don't you're doing all this swim biking anyway. Why don't you totally back off the running and do a triathlon for my charity? And then kind of ease back into it. And yeah, I did the triathlon and I was hooked. I absolutely loved it.
That's awesome. With the three modalities of triathlon, do you have a favorite or one that you feel strongest in?
Yeah, definitely the run. I'd say, yeah, I do enjoy biking, but my run's my favorite, and sure, the swim is hard work.
Yeah. Well, that's good. The last stretch of the race is your favorite portion, right? To keep the ball rolling. That's good. Yeah. And so with the injury, the knee surgery and stuff like that, was there anything, if you recall, nutritionally or supplementally that you made some changes around to help with that recovery process? Or was it more a lot of like PT and, like you're saying, keeping moving and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so this was actually something that I used to be quite reluctant to talk about, but having now started to run faster than when I was a runner, I feel more confident that it's more of a positive message. But I actually went for 4 years. I lost my period. I was definitely not eating well, not eating healthily. I decided that for some reason I was going to cut fat out of my diet. Which I think again was like a big factor to having that tendinopathy. And yeah, I wasn't a healthy weight. My coach actually was really good. Him and my mum had lots of conversations, and I was up doing a treadmill run with him once a week. And he would only let me get on the treadmill if I was a certain weight. And I remember I used to drink loads of water kind of going into that so that I'd weigh in okay and do my run. And yeah, I had a DEXA scan. My bone density wasn't good. I kind of messed up my body. And that was another thing that I think I only really truly got out of when I was out of that intense kind of running goal focus. And was like, okay, I'm going to go into triathlon. Okay, now I'm going to start listening to people. I'm going to start eating healthily and eating, not excluding kind of groups of food, because I was suddenly living with triathletes and seeing what they were eating. And I couldn't get through 3 sessions a day on what I was eating before.
Wow. Yeah. I think that's really incredible for you to share that. And it is such even athletes, goodness, that we have come to us. I would say 90% of them are under consuming, whether it's intentional or unintentional, from a fueling perspective. And it is really incredible how we have these three modalities of sport that are really important to train, but to do those things, you also have, like, nutrition is such a big part of it to keep that engine going. Right. And, yeah, it is such an important piece of the puzzle that I think sometimes is overlooked, or like you're saying too, some people think kind of the lighter might be faster or those kind of things to help with that. And yeah, I think I'm really happy you mentioned that and you are sharing that, and that you've overcome that hump too. I think that's really huge. Do you want to tell us a little bit about like what your nutrition right now looks like on the day-to-day? Like what's your go-to like breakfast or pre-workout or post-workout? Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's now, so I'm 3 or 4 kilograms heavier as when I was an endurance runner. And I just ran a 3-minute half marathon PB. So 100% a healthy body is a faster body. And now I feel confident saying that message. But yeah, if I compare to, so a typical day, actually, I'll go through what I did today. So I will have a coffee and some crackers in the morning, just because, yeah, they're low on fiber and seems to work well for me going into my swim. I did a hard swim session, had a protein shake after, and went back home, had some egg on toast, went out on the bike, and I did a 3-hour ride. So there I'm trying to consume around 80 to 90 grams, because it was a hard session, of carb an hour. Nice. With my electrolytes in. Then come back, had another protein shake. And then I had, what did I have before? I think I had honey on toast before I did an evening, very chilled run. Yeah, and then we've just had dinner, which was broccoli, chicken, and rice.
Yum.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And the 80 to 90 gram carb per hour that you're doing during your long bike, what kind of go-to products do you like to use to help hit that goal that work for you?
Yeah, so I use Precision Hydration, and their mix is 30 grams a scoop, so 30 grams of in their carb drink. So I'll put 60 grams in each bottle, just because I find that's such an easy way, because then I know, okay, I'm going to consume my hydration and my calories, like that's the bulk of the calories. And then their gel is around 20 grams of carbs. So that kind of 2 of them with both bottles is just an easy way for me to get that in that 3 hours and not really have to carry a lot either.
Awesome. Do you follow a similar pattern when you race as well?
Yeah, definitely. So that's something, again, having come into suddenly kind of not having a lot of fuel and exercising to then into a sport where actually if you can fuel better, like it took a while for my gut to, like, had stomach issues to begin with, because you can't just ramp straight up to that. So that was like, I had to kind of drip feed in to begin with. And yeah, now I just feel like 90 grams is that's my target per hour for a race. And yeah, training my gut in the products that I'm going to be using in a race just means that I can kind of be pretty certain that the GI issues are going to keep away.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a similar situation we've seen with many athletes, right? Where goodness, maybe they're not using any of the products, and then they go to the race and then they use, maybe it's on course nutrition, which is stuff they've never tested with. And then the GI is like just in knots. So I think that's a great point, is training with what you're going to use with and at volumes that you're going to use it at as well.
And I've had that in a race before where I've gone over a speed bump, dropped my bottle, and then I'm like, cool, okay, I'm just going to grab what they had on race course, grabbed a Coke, and in that race realized that Coke is a no-go zone for me in a race.
Yeah, shoot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we learn those lessons the hard way, unfortunately, in that last minute decision making. That's hard. When you lose a bottle, there's not a whole lot to come back from there in those certain situations.
Yeah. And now I have extra gels just in case. They're kind of my safety net.
Yes. Yeah. I've heard so many stories. Goodness. I had one athlete where I think they just were having the worst day ever. Like, I think they said they got stung by like 2 bees, got a flat, dropped a bottle, like, all the things that could go wrong that went wrong. So yeah, planning as best as you can, like you're saying, bringing kind of backup, whether it's gels, nutrition, it's hard to bring backup bottles, but doing what you can, I think is smart there. That kind of makes me, go ahead.
Like a world champs, if it's a really big race, I'll just Google, like, find out what it is going to be given on course, and just train a little bit on that, just to check that I know, okay, I can grab that if I need to.
That's smart. That is smart. Do you, with the world champ stuff, are they just doing a lot of Martin product and Gatorade drink, or what's the go-to right now?
Yeah. So that seems to be kind of Morton gels, and Gatorade on the drinks, and like, I'm never too sure though, like when you run through those and it's the Gatorade that's been mixed, like you can never be 100% certain what the concentration is, but yeah, it's Gatorade seems to be working fine.
That's good. Yeah. Training yourself with that on the backup, I think is smart. I have a lot of athletes where they'll do their own nutrition hydration on the bike, but then on the run, they want to use like aid station stuff. And I think that's a great kind of example, like you're saying, to make sure you practice with that stuff that you're going to use on course. So your gut knows what it's like and what it tastes like in the heat, too, is another factor. That makes me think of, I watched a YouTube video of you recently talking about the ending up in the medic tent with, I believe it was like a dehydration or overheating situation. Do you want to share a little bit about that experience and how you kind of figured out your maybe fluid and hydration or salt needs too after that?
Yeah. So it was in Miami. And I've tended to be like, and I've had the same thing. So in heat, and I train a lot in the heat and can get it, like I can be fine. And then something about the humidity, I'm a really high kind of sweater, and a high concentration of salt. I did a test with Precision Hydration and I sweat a lot of salt. And yeah, so in Durban, Kona, Miami, I've passed out in all those races, and all of them very humid conditions. And Miami was the most recent one, and we've changed quite a few things since then, which have actually really helped. And I think the big one was leading into the race. So the day before, I used to think I was drinking loads because I was drinking all the time, because I was like, oh, I don't want to pass out. It's going to be a humid race. But a lot of that was kind of water. So there wasn't a lot of electrolytes in there. So now my golden rule, like whatever the race is, I will only drink electrolytes. So all of my water, I'll put electrolytes in those bottles. And I'll get through at least 2 750 bottles during the day. And yeah, depending on the conditions, if it's a humid day, I'll do more. But yeah, that was kind of one of the first big things, because I think a lot of the time I was kind of almost washing my electrolytes out. Maybe I was peeing a lot, but yeah, thinking I was hydrated, but actually going in quite dehydrated.
Right.
And then the other thing was the pacing strategy. So it was a slightly shorter race to a 70.3. And there were lots of twists and corners. And looking at my bike kind of power file, I was generating a lot of heat as well, because I was going hard into the corners, hard out of the corners, and pushing a lot higher power, because in my head it was a lot shorter race. So I think then that core temperature coming up, and yeah, not drinking more, because I was using the same amount of calories that I would have, and not having more fluid. Whereas when I've trained since in Thailand, we've tried to go a little bit lower. So kind of the 70, 75 on the carb, and having more fluid. So it's been less concentrated.
Nice. That's those are, yeah, the I'm not good with the mechanical stuff. I'm like, you could talk to me about nutrition and gut training and hydration all day, but the actual mechanical stuff of you're saying pacing strategies and stuff like that, that is like definitely outside of my wheelhouse of not what I would have thought about, but that's really interesting. And then with the prep beforehand, the electrolytes, like you're saying, you said 750, are you talking 750 mils of fluid, or using the Precision? Do they have a 750 version or something like that?
Yeah, so it's 50. So I put the 1500, highest concentration, and I'll put 1.5 into, so it's 2 sachets for a liter.
Gotcha.
I do 2 bottles of 3, and then keep on drinking after that.
Perfect. Do you on race morning also sip on electrolytes, or what's your race morning routine look like?
Definitely. And now I've actually come off caffeine. Like I won't have a coffee before, if it's going to be a really humid race, just because, I think the pros versus the cons of anything dehydration, like I won't go near oats, like totally low fiber. Just keep it as simple and as well hydrated with the electrolytes as possible.
Yeah. What does your go-to race morning breakfast look like?
So we've played around a little bit recently. It used to be jam on toast. So white bread and jam, super simple, can get it anywhere. And then my husband tried and swore by it, white rice with fructose. So mixing a little bit of the fructose into oat milk and then pouring it over some white rice. Just a little bit harder to always know that you can get it like at a race. Like I find it easy to travel with the jam and bread. But yeah, at home it works well.
That's great. I haven't heard that one before. That's an interesting one. I do hear often like the eggs and rice, you know, race morning is popular, I've heard. But yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the rice is very glucose dominant, and then you want to mix up some fructose in there to get a little bit of the two types of sugars to stock away and, you know, act on the different receptors in the intestine. So yeah, that makes sense. And also all very low fiber. So that's always good. With the racing itself, we talked about hydration your hydration and heat tolerance. And you mentioned the core temperature. Out of curiosity, I keep seeing all these Instagram ads for that core temperature sensor. Have you played around with that at all?
So I actually just did a test. So you know the little temperature pill that you can take.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I just did a test to see, because I have 2 race suits. So like a one with arms and legs, which is like I get so much hotter in, and I feel so much better in my swimsuit. And they were like, okay, let's have some evidence for that. So I think the only thing, because it's not the material, and I do think it's very personal to me, because not a lot of people like find the same thing. But I don't know if it's just because it closes like my sweat, because I sweat a lot from here, and if it closes those, or just the volume of sweat makes my suit heavy, or I'm not sure if it does, but there was a difference. So
interesting. So you found that the swimsuit was a cooler approach versus I mean, yeah, part of that kind of feels like it makes sense, right? Because you can get that evaporative cooling effect maybe really well because you have less coverage, but then there are so many factors, right? Of like the radiant heat from the sun, and if you're exposed, and yeah, that is an interesting arena for sure. I'm curious to see more research come out of that.
So we didn't test, so that was like inside, so we could do like controlled environment, but so this year had, so my full length one is a little bit darker, and then a lighter color for my swimsuit, again, just in case, like you said about the exposure, if that is like a thing that, because I saw the Norwegians racing the Olympics in like white suits. So it must be a thing because they test everything.
Yes. Yeah. We're seeing too a lot of sports like the ultra cycling and stuff too, where they're wearing like their camelbacks or their bladders are all white too, to try and keep their water as cool as they can. And yeah, I mean, and their suits are all white, and granted they get covered in mud.
Darker colors that absorb the heat from the sun.
Yeah. It's really interesting. So fascinating. All the little like tweaks that can be made, right, to improve performance and core temperature. So you mentioned sweat testing and kind of determining all that. Can you tell us a little bit about your sweat testing experience and how you do that and what that's like?
Yeah, so precision hydration, literally put a sweat patch on me, and did all their numbers, and that was kind of how they determined, okay, you need, because they do a 500, 1,000 and a 1,500 sodium, and they were like, you need the 1,500, this is why. And I like to see like numbers and science behind what, when someone tells you something and then be like, and we can say this, we know this definitely because of this. Just handy to know, okay, I'm definitely putting the right stuff in my body.
Definitely. That's great. With the precision they're testing, right? You're sitting in the lab. You're not on the bike or on a treadmill or anything like that, right?
Yeah. So 4 years ago, I did one in the lab, where that was pre-Kona. So they put it under kind of race conditions to try and work out, okay, you're going to sweat this much. And yeah, they were like, okay, good luck. You're a very, very heavy sweater.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you know how many liters or ounces you lose like per hour roughly, or what you're?
Sure. I have the results somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. My husband can go back and find them, but because it was super interesting, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was, I just remember there being a lot of it and very salty.
Those are the two. I mean, usually, goodness, and those are two hard things to mitigate, right? I mean, I remember I had an athlete, and he was an ultra runner, and his fluid loss was upwards of 80 ounces per hour. And you can't consume that much fluid typically to try and mitigate that over, goodness, a 20-hour race. So with your situation of being a heavy sweater and a salty sweater, have you ever weighed in like immediately before and immediately after a session to see how much weight was lost via water, out of curiosity?
Oh, again, this is something I have done, but it was quite a few years back. But yeah, it was interesting. And like, I've been kicked out of gyms for making too much mess on the floor, and
no way.
Oh my gosh.
But
Wow.
and I think that's one of the reasons why I don't just kind of feel terrible in these races. Like I pass out because so I have a low blood volume, low blood pressure. So they say, like, when you're losing that much sweat, your blood just physically like isn't pumping around. So yeah, you can go from like standing up, like running along, to just suddenly you're kind of it's just a weird feeling.
Yes. Do you feel it coming on? Like, do you see the stars coming, or is it just?
Yeah, all of a sudden, like I just feel like really spacey. Like I feel like so light and just it's almost like there's train tracks in my head. Like I have this like roller coaster, and just wake up like with everyone looking down.
Oh man. And have you ever, like, when you've passed out, have you ever hit your head, or it's been a smooth fall, or?
No, so one time I was in Lanzarote, and so Lanzarote can get super windy, and I'd done a hard treadmill session, and then I had a bike ride, but they were like, oh, this afternoon the wind is going to pick up, so like if you're going to ride outside, you better go now. So I hadn't like drunk a whole lot, jumped straight on the bike, went out for the ride, and I remember climbing up to the top. Then I started descending, and then I just woke up, kind of ambulances called, and I thankfully just like a car had been driving behind and saw me like swaying across the road. But yeah, broken clavicle and lots of nice road rides.
Oh man, I'm sorry. That's rough.
Yeah. That's a hard recovery too from a broken clavicle.
Yeah. Goodness. How long ago was that?
That was the end of 2017.
Wow. Goodness. Wow. Oh man, that just like hurts. Like I like thinking about that, like getting dizzy, biking downhill. That's yikes. That's scary. Did they diagnose you with like POTS, the postural orthostatic, like where you stand up and you can get lightheaded kind of thing, or?
Yeah, I get that a lot. And so I went over to Belgium for some tests. And that's where they said, like, your heart is beating really slow because you've got a low volume, you've got a low pressure. And they wanted to put in a chip so that, like, if it slows down too much, it's gonna like kick in.
Wow.
But my mum's a doctor, and she was like, I don't want you, like, if it happens again, but you need to like actually look after your body better rather than put something in that's gonna stimulate you. And there's other complications. So I think that route.
Goodness. So if you stay on top of your sodium intake, nutrition intake, you're in a good place. You don't notice that happen as much.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, I've kind of got to the stage where I try to avoid if it's going to be a really humid race, I kind of know that it's actually, it's not a good thing for me to go there. And thankfully there's enough races where, there's hot races, there's so many races now. yeah, I can kind of just stay away from that extreme.
That's good. That's good. So let's see, for our listeners, I'm sure they're aware if they're listening to this at this point, but I'm going to shift directions towards your recent race and post and all the kind of like hype that came from around that race, where you were racing and you were on your period, and there was a lot of I'm curious to hear what you felt from that and what was happening, because when I saw the post, I was like, heck yes, like, thank you. But I'm curious from your end, like, what kind of feedback were you like hearing and getting? And if you want to share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, so I think originally, so I did the race, and like one day of my period is always really heavy, and I know it's going to be super heavy, and it was that day, and I remember talking to my husband in the morning, and he's like, hey, like, you've done this before, it doesn't matter that it's a big race, it's still just a race, like, get out there, be strong. And then we got the photos back, and obviously I knew that I'd been on a heavy period, and of about 20 of the photos, like, there was 2 that you could see like a little bit. But I thought, yeah, like, whatever, kind of, I was super proud of how I did on a hard day. And then 2 weeks later, PTO put up the picture and wishing us good luck for another race. And someone had commented that it wasn't very flattering and maybe should be cropped. And that was kind of, I felt like that was the total opposite emotion to what I had, like, looking at that picture. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I just think it's like modern art, like, someone can see, not like just look at like, oh, that's just mess on a wall. Whereas to someone else, explain what it is behind it and all this stuff. Like, I'm also one of those people that thinks like that your social media, especially if you're trying to be a role model, if you're trying to be inspiring, then you shouldn't try and glamorize what you're doing. Like, it should be real, and you're a real person. You're not a robot. You are just like anyone else out there, which is the beauty of it, because they can also do what you're doing, because like everyone's just the same. And I think to then crop that out and to just pretend that like it doesn't happen to us, it was just the total opposite message that I wanted to say. So I kind of tried to explain a little bit on a comment just back to him as like why I didn't think it should be cropped, and that it's just reality of females in sport. And then from that, I had so many messages of, and I think the ones that really touched me were from men and women who were saying like, like, if that was me, I'd be super embarrassed. Or if that was any other woman in my office, I know they wouldn't want that picture up of them. And that's when I thought, okay, I kind of have a responsibility then to put it up myself and say, this is normal, like, there is no shame. And I kind of hoped it would kind of have some good, honest, open talk, which there's been so many good things. Like, for every negative comment, there's probably been about 30, like, people just, I don't know, wanting to talk about it and also giving advice. Like, just as much as I've had back from advice, like cups. I've tried a cup before and I hated it. And the amount of people who have actually said, try this brand and do this. And if it feels uncomfortable at the start, do this. And I was like, wow. And I've tried it. And like, one of the brands, like, I'm now using, like, I would swear by that, and I'd pass it on to any person. And it's just that kind of, it's been awesome. It's been really good. And I kind of just think, the more we can just make people, anything that will make a female feel comfortable in sport, because there's so many barriers out there that are reasons why people don't participate. If we can just give more reasons to participate, that's good enough for me.
Awesome. I love it. I think it was a very strong image and picture, and I loved it. I thought, like I said, I when I saw that, I was like, thank goodness. Like, I think it says a lot. It says so many things. It shows so many people, men and women, that we can race on our cycle. We can have a period and be strong and fit and do well. We don't have to be in a place where we're restricting energy to a point where we're losing our cycle. I just think there's so many positive things to take from that. And so I just want to say thank you for sharing that and doing that. And then, the menstrual cup talk too. I think that is just an area where it's like, there are a lot of cool tools that are coming out for like period care. And I don't think people talk about them enough or know, like, I mean, the cup, I personally too have played around with like 1 or 2 cups and I just couldn't figure it out. So I do think like there are different versions that fit people differently. And I think, just like playing around with that. And I don't know if you have any suggestions from the feedback you got. Someone had told me that there's a quiz online that you could take to like figure out the right cup size and stuff too.
Yeah. And I think size is so important. And these people that I've tried, I think they're South African company, but Best Period. And the different sizes make such a difference, like to get there. And there is, I can't remember what it is, but I also did that. And it takes you through the steps, which is.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll try and find that and link it in the show notes for the listeners. Cause I think it can be a great tool and goodness, all the, environmental benefit, I think as well and money saving. Goodness gracious. We had a period person come on here and give the stats of how much money women spend on menstrual care products throughout their life. And it is bananas. And like, it's like, goodness.
And people have like talked about the fact that all of the other like PMS symptoms that they have, whether it's cramping or any other discomfort that they have, seems to lessen when they switch over to that as well, which makes me curious about what is going on with the tampon companies.
What's in there
and what's in that, because I've noticed it. I know a lot of my friends and a lot of my athletes have noticed it too, and that it's a little concerning.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, what was the name of the cup you like, Emma? Best Period?
Best Period, yeah.
Okay. We'll link that in the notes too for anyone to see if they can get it, whether they're in South Africa or if they can get it in the States here as well. But we'll link that one and we'll try and find that cup quiz for the listeners as well to check out. Awesome. So what's coming up next for you on the racing calendar?
So I'm going to do Andorra 70.3 and Swansea 70.3. And then Europeans and Worlds. So lots of trips over to Europe and back.
Goodness. And how, with all that travel, how do you, how do you adjust to the different time zones? Do you have any tips and tricks for time zone shifting?
Yeah. So, that is why I love South Africa to Europe racing, is like the same time zone. So is a beauty. America kills me. I get on that Johannesburg and Newark flight, so that's 16 hours. So for me, I don't find jet lag too bad going that way. So I get to traveling the right way, and if possible, kind of linking things up. I always try to be arriving in the evening, so I get a good night's sleep, because then I can literally land, shower, feel good, and then sleep. And that pretty much gets me straight into the time zone. Coming back, there is, again, I try, if possible, I always want to get more sleep than less sleep. So eye mask for me is massive. Eye mask, and I download on Spotify relaxing music.
Nice.
Work out when it is I'm meant to be sleeping to get on South Africa time zone. And get on that time zone without losing sleep. So if it means gaining a bit, just like clocking on and getting into that time. And then when I'm at home, my dogs are the best sleepers. We've got 2 staffies, so we run them wild. And then the big boy, you got a big black boy, and I just lie with him on my chest. He already starts snoring. And I just find it the most relaxing thing. And that helps me kind of in the middle of the night when you wake up at that 2 a.m. I'll be like, okay, find him, hug him. And then, that's just I don't know. I guess be as comfortable as possible.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love the pup cuddles is comforting for sure. And then with the time zone travel and just on planes and all that stuff, do you have any tools, tips, supplements, tricks that you do to keep your immune system in a good place?
Yeah, so I try about 3 to 4 days before I'm traveling, because I don't take vitamin C like all the time. I read somewhere that it works better if you take it in hits.
Yeah.
So that'll be my kind of 3 to 4 days out. And then when we put like tea tree oil under the nose before we get on the plane, and yeah, touch wood, that seems to have worked pretty well for me so far.
Yeah, I've read some stuff. I don't know, Amanda, if you've heard this as well. I forget who it was in one of some like popular researchers' books, but he was saying when he travels, he takes like 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C every hour. Have you heard of that?
I haven't, and that seems like a lot.
If you're on a 16-hour flight, like that is like, I mean, I guess eventually you would pee it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's a fat soluble one that's going to hang around, but that's I don't know if I'd be up for that. Also, then how much are you drinking to be able to get all of that in?
Yeah. I think he had capsules, I would imagine, but
okay.
Yeah. Anyways, that's random side note. Something that made me think about the travel. So let's see, I want to be mindful of your time, so we can kind of circle back to our 2 truths and a lie. So you said you have a brother who's a professional wrestler. You can stick your tongue up your nose. If you can stick your tongue up your nose, you are going to have to do it for the video watchers. If that's not the lie. And that you were a part of a world record 4x1500 meter race. Amanda and I believe that you can't stick your tongue up your nose, and that was a lie, but go ahead and let us know which one was your lie.
I'm going to regret this. Mother is actually a professional ballet dancer.
Oh, cool.
That is the false. Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. And you said you have there's 3 kiddos, your brother, and do you have another brother or sister? Awesome.
Yeah. And a brother.
Awesome. So do you want to stick your tongue up your nose? You don't have to.
I can. It just, my husband hates this. This is like my party trick, and he's so embarrassed. But it looks perfect, but I'm gonna do it. Okay, ready?
Okay. Nice. That is impressive. Wow. That is impressive. So for our people who are listening, you're going to have to go back and watch the video version on YouTube to see if Emma stick her tongue up her nose. And tell us about the world record 4x1500 event.
Yeah, so when we were juniors, they just selected the 4 fastest ranked in GB, and they were like, girls, we're gonna break a world record. So they flew us all up to Scotland, like got the best conditions, and yeah, we felt like rock stars. They filmed us, but I was actually so nervous because I was like, what if I'm the one that does the slow time? But yeah, we all nailed it and broke the world record. So
woohoo! Congratulations. That is awesome.
So cool.
Yeah, amazing. Well, where can our listeners find you, follow you, learn more about you?
Mainly Instagram. Yeah, I normally post more on there.
Yeah, and your Instagram handle is at M_Pallant.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. And then there are some good YouTube videos I've come across as well. I'm not sure that you've shared them personally, but I know Precision put one out and stuff like that, talking about your hydration and fueling strategies and stuff like that, if people want to watch those. And then we will include in the show notes the Precision Hydration links that Emma talked about, the best period product, and we'll find that cup quiz for everybody. And then we'll be cheering you on for your upcoming races that you have coming up. Hopefully all the not too hot for you and everything goes as planned, as best as possible. But thank you so much for joining us, Emma. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And sticking the tongue up the nose is not a nutritional tip. I don't recommend.
Don't be doing that during racing, folks.